Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Awake to Oneness Radio. I am Caroline Chang, your host. The mission of Awake to Oneness Radio is to inspire the world to awaken to the universal truth of oneness. Spirituality and science are both telling us that we are literally all connected, that we're literally all one. And what you do to another person, you are literally doing to yourself. So when the world awakens to the universal truth of oneness, there will be peace on earth. Today's show topic is creating a new narrative of peace with Philip Hellmich. Philip is the director of peace for the Shift Network, and he's also the author of God and Conflict. We like to welcome Philip to Awake to Oneness Radio. Hi, Philip. How are you?
Hi, Caroline. I'm wonderful, and thank you so much for having me here on Awake to Oneness.
Thank you so much for being with us. We truly appreciate that. That's our honor to have you. Can you please share with our audience your story, your journey, and the work that you're doing? But basically, how did you get started in the work that you're doing? And you give us the backstory of you.
Sure, I'll do that. But first, I just want to acknowledge I really enjoy reading more about your own story and the story with Kyle, and just really want to offer my just deep, heartfelt gratitude for who you are and how you responded to that own pain and suffering in your own life. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, well, my own background, my experiences, I don't know if I could have ever dreamed it up. I was born in a family in Indiana, rural Indiana. My parents had 10 children. I was the fifth, the only one that was planned. And then we picked up one more brother later when his parents died. And it was it's a small town, factories and farms. And it was a pretty idyllic way to grow up. My older brothers always protected us. Took care of us. We were really tight-knit. My dad worked in a factory. My mom stayed home and babysat. And we were really, really close and a really strong sense of family. And my parents always instilled into us about the idea of, taking care of others and helping out. And even though we financially didn't have a lot, we felt like we were really, really close. And all 10 of us, well, actually all 11 of us were able to put ourselves through college and several doctorate degrees. And it's just a beautiful story. My parents were married before the senior year of high school, and so it had just a lot of love. And then I graduated from college, and I wanted to serve. And friends of mine had applied for Peace Corps. My older brother had done a medical residency in Liberia, so I signed up for Peace Corps. Was invited to Sierra Leone, West Africa. So I go from rural Indiana, and the town I was in at the time was ethnically just homogenous, just all white at the time. It's now more diverse. And then suddenly I was living in Sierra Leone in a small remote bush village, and had gone through the training. And the first village I lived in was Cagberry, has about 30 houses, 300 people out in the bush and subtropics forests. And then I ended up staying 4 years instead of 2, and I lived in another village called Masongbo, just because I just fell in love with the people. And I stumbled across some work, of building water wells and then also fishing lures. But really, what happened for me there in Sierra Leone was a gradual transformation, where there was no electricity, no running water. My friends were and are subsistence farmers, meaning they lived off of what they grew from the earth. And then there was these rhythms. There was the rhythms of rainy season and dry season. There was rhythms of the moon. Suddenly the moon cycles were all apparent. There was the rhythms of hungry season when there wouldn't be much food to eat and hard work in the fields, and then there was harvest season when there was plenty and lots of ceremonies and dancing and and then my friends also had a deep sense of spirituality that was connected with earth and their ancestors and spirit. And they would initiate young boys and girls to, go off into the bush for initiations in these secret societies. And I would hear the drumming, I'd hear the chanting, and they would come out and be welcomed by the community as adults. And through this, and even though life was hard physically, I mean, subsistence farming is very, very difficult work. It's very, very strenuous. Yet at the same time, and also 1 out of every 4 or 5 children would die before the age of 5. And I would hear the crying through the village. Even though there was physically hard, there was a deep sense of connectedness and belonging that was even stronger than what I had experienced growing up. And there was a very strong sense of family, extended community, and relationship with ancestors, and relationship with the earth, and a deep sense of spirituality, and that there was a sense of well-being from that sense of connectedness and belonging. And all of this really didn't register to me how much I had transformed until I came back. I came back once after 2.5 years for holidays to visit my family and a wedding. And then after 4 years when I came back, suddenly there was this reverse culture shock because, there was no electricity, no running water, spending a lot of time. Keeping time was an expression. You just keep time with one another. And suddenly it was like Indiana, the TV had gone from a few stations to cable TV, lots and lots of TV stations. My family was spending a lot of time in front of the TV instead of just talking with one another. People seemed to be in a hurry to go off chasing something, to be someplace, to do something. And then there was all these advertisements, media of, I must have this, or that in order to be happy or to avoid, something fearful. And then I was just like, my God, the sense of happiness, what is this pursuit of happiness? The United States founded upon life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness didn't make sense because people didn't seem to have the time to connect with one another or to spend time connecting with the environment, let alone to follow the cycles of the moon. And so I was really, really confused. And at the same time, Caroline, I realized that our lifestyles were impacting not only the environment, but also people in other countries that we would never see. I mean, with the environment in Sierra Leone, when there was a plastic bottle, it would always be reused. I mean, people would ask me if they could have the plastic bottle. Nothing went to waste. Everything was organically recycled. And when I would see the trash that would be put out to the street week after week after week after week, and I was like, yet people didn't seem as happy as my friends in the village. So this really started some questioning. And at this time, I through a series of events, I ended up meeting Michael Singer, who is now the author of 2 New York Times best-selling books. One is The Untethered Soul, and the other one is The Surrender Experiment. At the time, or Mickey as he is known, he has a little ashram. He's a yogi. And at the time, he was the head of a small software company that later became WebMD. It's a wonderful story, his story in The Surrender Experiment. And I met him and started studying mind-body health awareness, and I started to explore meditation and just really started to question things. And Mickey was a really profound influence because he, when I would meet with him, I would go on and on about the pain and suffering in different places around the world, and he would say, well, who asked you how it should be? And then Mickey would say, if you were on the planet Pluto and it was orbiting the way that you didn't like, what are you going to do about it? And then he said, look, there's millions and billions of stars in the galaxy, and there are billions of galaxies more being discovered all the time, and all of these are guided by an intelligence. That if you turn to that intelligence, it will guide your life in ways that you've never imagined. And that's exactly what happened to Mickey. He went from wanting to be just meditating in the woods to becoming the CEO of what was later WebMD. And so he mentioned this to me, and it really challenged me. But I was kind of in an upset and angry phase because the Persian Gulf War started, and I knew that was based on oil. And then I went to the Navajo reservation to teach. I spent a lot of time meditating out there in on the mesas. And then the war in Sierra Leone started. And the war in Sierra Leone started, and it was fueled in part economy because of blood diamonds. And I knew our lifestyle in the West not only contributed to the war in the Persian Gulf, but it contributed to the war in Sierra Leone. And so when I was on the Navajo reservation, right next to the Hopi reservation, teaching elementary school, just meditating a lot, it dawned on me that, I was reading a lot about His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and he was saying, everybody wants to be happy and everybody wants to avoid suffering, and that we have our common humanity. So I thought, well, why don't we focus on a project that would look at people's desire for inner peace around the world? And so I went to Washington, D.C. and tried to do that through Peace Corps and tried through several different ways. And, and kind of crashed and burned. And I went back down to see Mickey, and he basically said, look, you thought you knew what was going on. You had to get blown out of that seat with dynamite. And he drove me around his office building, and then he said, we now have several hundred employees, and I did not do any of this. All I did was follow Shakti, spirit. Shakti said, go left, Shakti says, right, go right. And he again reminded me, he said, learn to follow the energy. So I went back to D.C., and I got a job with Search for Common Ground, which is now one of the world's largest organizations. And then, lo and behold, Nicky had predicted, he said, follow the energy. It may take you back to Africa in ways that you never imagined. So suddenly I'm working with Search for Common Ground, and then they asked me to go back to Sierra Leone on an assessment mission. This was 1998. The war had been going on for 7 years. I'd left there from Peace Corps 9 years earlier. And I can't tell you, Caroline, how nervous I was about going back, because Sierra Leone had been through this bloody, chaotic civil war. People in the news from Sierra Leone was about child soldiers, hacking off the limbs of women and children and doing horrific things. I would go back, and this country that had been my home was suddenly overrun by military from West African countries, peacekeeping troops. And there were bullet holes everywhere, buildings burnt out. And then my colleague and I went up country, and there were vehicles that had been ambushed and were burnt out on the side of the road, and went out further, and a BBC person had been killed that same week on the same road we were traveling on, but a little bit further out. We got back up to a town where I had been as a Peace Corps volunteer, where I'd get supplies. We met with the Catholic bishop, and when he heard I had lived in Masongbo, he volunteered to take me back. We went back to Masongbo on a Sunday morning. Catholic church is just rocking and rolling with drumming and chanting, and my friends were there, and some of them were there, and it was this joyous reunion. But it was a mixture, because the poverty had hit even worse. People's clothes, there was more malnourishment. People would tell me the stories about the atrocities of the RUF rebels, and then meanwhile they handed me everything they had: coconuts, palm wine, cola nuts. And I left there, and when I left, I told them I would be back and that we were going to start a project. And then when we were in McKinney, what we came across was a mob killing of a rebel person. And I got out and got pictures of, I didn't know what to do. And it was this shock of seeing this mob killing of a young person who had been accused of being a rebel in this place that felt like my second home. And here I was by this point meditating a couple hours a day. And then I go back to Washington, D.C. We write a report to, seek funding. And then what happens is the war came back through. The front page of the New York Times was a picture of a woman with both arms cut off in the same exact area had been a few weeks earlier with my friend. And so suddenly the war came back through. My friends were then again held hostage by these rebels. They went down, they Freetown. Over 3,000 people killed. A documentary was produced and aired on CNN. CNN warned that the graphics were really horrible, but it resulted in the United Nations sending the largest peacekeeping mission in the world at that time to Sierra Leone. And it took 2 years, but at this point, my heart is just breaking. I mean, it's just literally breaking, because I have a picture of me with my friends, and I have a picture of this New York Times. So what I did is I took this into my meditation practice. And at this point, I was practicing a tradition taught by Paramahansa Yogananda, who brought yoga to the West in 1920. And he always encouraged people to pray to that aspect of the divine that is most dear to them. It doesn't matter what aspect. For some, it could be Buddha. Others, it could be Christ. It could be impersonal joy. And he said, if you ever want a response from God, pray to the Divine Mother. That the Divine Mother is bound to respond to her children. And so I just started praying to the Divine Mother, like, help me understand what's going on here. And then what started happening, and I go into a little bit in the book, is I started to have these ecstatic experiences. And when they started coming, they felt very, very, at first I started writing this love poetry, and then started having these experiences, and it would be this intoxicating divine love. And at sometimes after it would go on, I would just break down and start crying, saying, I've missed you, I've missed you, I've missed you. Like on a deep intuitive level, there was this part of me that knew of this basic oneness, this oneness when in that state, when the ego's judgments, everything is cast aside, there is this state of oneness with everything, where every cell in the body pulses with this awakened sense of loveness. And of just this love and this oneness. And it was, at first it was confusing because, I was raised Catholic. Like, how can God be making love to me? It's just like, that's what it felt like. And then, but I just stayed with it. And then I started making trips back to Sierra Leone on these peacekeeping trips. And so I started going in and out of Sierra Leone when it's, the continuous peace process, and then Liberia, and then Congo, Rwanda, and all these different countries plus sub-Saharan Africa. But even one time, I barely missed a coup attempt. I went back to the hotel and meditate, and boom, there's that presence again. So I really started to inquire, how can there be, and then I found out that one of the villages I lived in, Masongbo, had been sacked and held hostage by a rebel unit trained by a teenage boy named Colonel Rambo, who was trained by watching Rambo movies. So here are these teenage boys trained by watching Rambo movies, again, the Western impact. Then meanwhile, here's these ecstatic experiences, which can be, a person can reach those experiences through these very ancient scientific yogic techniques. And so all of this just drove me deeper and deeper and deeper. And when I came to see, and fortunately I was working on these peace building projects, because these peace building projects were just incredible. In Sierra Leone, we had former child soldiers, former rebels, former sex slaves, people producing radio programs on the airwaves that were reaching 89% of the country, helping shift the dynamics in the peace-building process. In Burundi, next to Rwanda, the Search for Common Ground had former Hutus and Tutsi co-producing radio programs within a year of the genocide. So these programs were having a dramatic effect. And what I started to see is that conflict is a natural result of feeling separate. And feeling separate from the other, we can judge the other based on race, identity, religion. But really, if you go further down, what it is there's a sense of separation from oneness, from our soul and spirit. And when we have that sense of separation, what happens is we have our thoughts, we have our emotions, we identify with them, we believe them, and that creates what Buddhists or people in the yogic tradition would call the wanting self. I want to be happy, I want to avoid suffering. All of us have that. It gives rise to the ego. And then the ego, feeling separate from everything, goes around rearranging the world to try to get it the way we want it in order to be happy and avoid suffering. And then, so conflict is natural because we're going to bump into each other in the process. Well, and so transforming conflict has helped people move beyond their sense of separation to rediscover their common humanity. And what we do is we awaken soul qualities, which scientists are now proving were hardwired for compassion, tolerance, and forgiveness. So the conflict transformation work is doing that. And so as I worked with these projects in Search for Common Ground, traveling all across sub-Saharan Africa, up to Macedonia, I really started to see that there was something much deeper going on with transforming conflict. Actually, we were leveraging the technology of the soul through modern peace-building process, and that science was starting to validate this awareness. The neuroscience was starting to validate these innate qualities. So I wanted to start exploring the consciousness of conflict and peace building. And then so it's about almost 5 years ago I joined the Shift Network, and in the past 5 years, we've been interviewing hundreds and hundreds of people, starting to map out peace from inner to international. And what we've been showing is that there's been an dramatic increase of peace building around the world in terms of the inner level, the number of people practicing yoga, meditation, scientific research on the benefit of yoga and meditation, and looking at compassion and tolerance and forgiveness. There's been an exponential growth of people who are practicing nonviolent communication, exponential growth of people practicing mediation or alternative dispute resolution. It goes on and on and on. And what that is, it's really, if you will, humanity's consciousness is growing where there's a greater awareness of oneness. And that sense of oneness is starting to express itself in individual, unique ways that's starting to help humanity deal with this crisis that's being accelerated by the fact that, the global economy, with technology, more and more people pursuing happiness out of control way, and yet what's responding is what, has been called the blessed unrest, is that people are looking at how to help create a world where we are aware of everyone. So that's a brief background of my own experience, and and I just love the fact that you're looking at this question of to awake to oneness, and what does that look like? I'm always looking at it's like how does that sense of oneness show up in a way that's meaningful to people where they are in their daily lives. And so at the Shift Network, we have the Summer Peace, the World Peace Library, and a Peace Ambassador training. So that's a brief overview, Caroline, and I love the question, so thank you for asking.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Like you said, I personally woke up to the truth of oneness in fall of 2007, and I understood it. It was like a light bulb went off, and more through I watched the documentary What the Bleep, and just understanding. Now, I had been studying spirituality on and off for many years, but now when I watched What the Bleep, it made me aware that quantum physics has proven that we are literally all connected, that we're all one. And I'm like, it's just like, okay, once I understood oneness, everything else made sense to me. All the questions and all the things I struggled with in studying spirituality made sense once I understood oneness. But like you said, the living it day by day, because even though I understood it in 2007, I didn't really apply it until I started applying it on a daily basis in my life in 2010. So it took like 3 years. I understand oneness, but now what do I do with it? Okay? And then 3 years later, I was like, okay, I'm going to apply it to my life daily and start studying daily. And that's what I love the Internet, because I did unplug from mainstream media. I stopped watching news in 2001, and I stopped watching commercial television in 2011. And so I unplugged from mainstream and got on the Internet and just started studying everything I could, quantum physics and spirituality, ancient wisdom. And like I said, it took, I guess, me losing my son was the catalyst for me to say, okay, let me now, I have this information, and I want to now inspire others with this information. And so that's how Awake to Oneness came to be. So nice. I truly and totally understand what you're coming from. So tell us more. Tell us more about the Shift Network and the Summer of Peace that you are involved with.
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge something you said there about, was the loss of your son. And, and that's something that I have seen in many of the interviews that I've conducted is, well, a couple of things. A, often pain and suffering is what brings us to our knees, that brings us to looking for something deeper than what we might have been seeking before. There's some yogis who say pain and suffering brings us to our knees to finally start seeking some type of relationship with whatever you want to call it, creative intelligence, God, spirit, whatever. Language will work differently. The Shift Network is, well, for just a background on Shift Network, I mean, it was founded by Stephen Dinan, who's now like a brother and a close friend of mine. And he was on a 10-day meditation retreat. He was working at Esalen, and he was arranging a lot of different speakers. And he just got a really clear vision of setting up a global multimedia platform that would help with the spreading of consciousness-raising content and making it as widely available as possible, so kind of a democratization of content. So he got a really clear vision, and he tried with one way, and it didn't work, and he tried through a nonprofit, and he got it as far as he could, and then he wanted to take it further, and so that's how he created the Shift Network. And, it started something like 6 years ago, and started with a series called Sacred Awakening, 40 Days of Sacred Awakening, and basically it's an online platform where we offer online summits, like conferences, and then we also courses where people can learn more from just amazing teachers that they can apply in their daily lives. And really the essence is to help people awaken to their own divinity, and then to take meaningful action, meaningful inspired action, meaning that it's action that's, and this is the key part, that it's action that's really guided by a higher source of wisdom, intuitive wisdom, that is also meaningful. And when I'm saying meaningful, is oftentimes when a person, this is a beautiful thing, it's when a person, and there's some great research, and I'll come back to this more piece. One of the people I've interviewed who I really, really, really enjoy is Richard Miller, who created, he's the founder of IRIS, which teaches Nidra Yoga, an ancient type of meditation, and he's now working with veterans with PTSD, he's working with homeless, he's working with a wide range of people, and he helps people go in and experience what he would say is a non-dual state. A non-dual state is where we can feel a oneness. He says we all have that capacity, and he even says which part of the brain gets activated, from a neuroscience play. He says we have the ability to be in a dual state where we feel separate from, and we take care of ourselves. We have the ability to be in a non-dual state. And we need to be able to navigate going in and out of both. But when we go into a non-dual state, what happens is a person gets in touch with a deeper sense of their soul purpose at this point in time. Each person's soul purpose will look a little bit different in the sense that it will be, wow, at this point in time, I'm going to be working on peace building, or this point in time, I'm going to be interviewing people around oneness, or this point in time, I'm going to be working with my family on this. And as we work on that, it helps heal and transform ourselves and then open up to deeper qualities of our own soul qualities. And invariably, that purpose will involve the benefit of others, which is, this has many, many implications. It proves that we're hardwired for passion and altruism, and that when we tap into these deeper, ancient teachings of inner science, we awaken these qualities for the benefit of society. I mean, you can also see how more and more people practicing yoga and meditation, tapping into these technologies, you can see that how that's going to create a wave of action around the world where people are starting to act towards a benefit of a larger whole. Instead of, when we have fear, we narrow our identity, and then we get focused on just taking care of me, mine, and it, and then, so we can see how, for me, this is really profound because Yogananda introduced yoga to the West in 1920. If you watch his movie, The Life of Yogananda, there's a powerful scene where it says, where Yogananda was writing the autobiography of a yogi in the mid-1940s, we were dropping the first atomic bomb. Like, the need for these teachings were more imperative than ever.
Right.
So coming back to the Shift Network, the idea is that, we're looking to help people awaken to their own divinity, aware that each person's path will look different, and yet we bring programs online, whether they're the online summits where people can learn from different teachers about a particular subject, and or specific classes where they can go deeper and then encourage people to take action. Now, the Summer of Peace was an inspiration of Stephen Dinan and Deva, Haley Mitchell, his wife, and several other people in the Bay Area wanting to start to celebrate peace on a community level. And then it evolved over time. And so when I've been brought on, I kind of married it with some interest myself and others of like, let's really start mapping out peace. Because what does peace mean? And there's a wonderful quote from a person named Steve Killalea, who's created something called the Global Peace Index, which is a scientific way of measuring the level of peace and lack of peace per country in the world. And every year they come out with a report saying this is the most peaceful country, this is the least peaceful. And they also measure the economic impact of the lack of peace. It's been voted one of the think tank is now one of the top 10 think tanks in the world. They've estimated that there's 12 to 13 trillion dollars a year lost to the lack of peace, and there's an estimate that with the trends, we're heading to the potential of losing $43 trillion to lack of peace and violence. So Steve Killalea, when he was interviewed, he said, look, we adjusted his quote here, but like there's 108 words for love in Sanskrit, 99 words for God in Islam, 14 words for beauty in Japanese. We've got 1 word for peace. We don't have all the words to accurately describe all the different ways that peace is understood. And he said, it was Socrates who said, if you don't have words, language to describe something, then how can you talk about it? So that really stood with me. And so what we've done by interviewing these hundreds of people is we've created a World Peace Library that has broad topics of inner peace, interpersonal family, and then community and international, and across over 26 sectors of society, from business and military and communications. And what we've been doing is showing that there is a larger wave. So one of the things what we're interested in is contributing to a new narrative of peace. That new narrative is that there is a wave of peace building emerging around the world, that there's new technologies based upon ancient wisdom and modern science that is providing very practical, hard-nosed ways for people to live more peacefully together and more peacefully with other countries and with the environment. And by bringing attention to this, that we can see that this wave has been quietly emerging, even though when you watch the news, all you think there is death and destruction and despair. But there's
that's kind of designed that way. Mainstream media.
It is.
News, yes.
Yes. And that's not, that's part of the story, but what's also, but you see, there's a saying of what we appreciate, which means when we bring attention to it, grows, it expands.
Okay.
And so we want to bring it, so we want to bring attention to the multiple different ways that peace is growing around the world. Okay. And by doing this, then we can accelerate it. And so that's what we're up to. And it's just so much fun. And then we also have these wonderful the Peace Ambassador training, which was designed by James O'Dea, who had been the director of Amnesty International. He was later the president of the Institute of North Science. And James is a longtime dear friend. And the Peace Ambassador training is designed to take people from looking at deep personal peace and then moving on up to healing personal collective wounds, communicating peace, and then mastering system change, organizing for peace. And so that's what we're doing. And I just pinch myself that I get to work at doing this because, everyone at the Shift Network is consciously trying to, really working to be as conscious as they, and then we get to serve people. And we've reached, we've reached well over 500,000 people now in some capacity. In the Peace Ambassador training, we have people from 21 countries. So that's what we're up to.
Wow.
And it's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I had said, the mainstream news media, that their job is trying to let the world, make the masses think that peace is not, that all there is war and violence, and that's not the case. And because they don't want the masses to know how, basically, to keep our vibration low, to keep the masses' vibration low so they don't know their own power and to keep them in a state of fear. But the tide has turned on that, my belief. The consciousness, mankind consciousness is evolving. It is, the tide has turned. Now things are moving in a more positive, loving, peaceful direction. And even if mainstream media is not reporting on it, we have the Internet. So we have other ways of obtaining this information that it's not all gloom and doom the way the 6 o'clock news wants you to think it is.
Right. And your radio program is a perfect example of that, Caroline. It's a perfect example. As you said, with the Internet, there's a lot of ability for people to create their own media, and you're doing it with this program. It came out of a heartbreak, and look at how you're responding. And there are people around the world responding to heartbreak through inspiring ways. Yes.
Mhm. Yes, very true. And the thing I love about the Internet talk radio is that even those who don't listen to this program live, they can listen to it anytime, any place in the world. All you need is a computer. So that's, so it's not like regular radio. You missed the show, you missed the show. It's there forever.
Right. Right.
So I do believe that the tide is turning. That's why I had a conversation with a friend today who kind of is like, you don't watch news? I'm like, no. You're not interested in the presidential election? No. I understand now. And when I stopped watching news, I didn't. This was back in 2001. I honestly just intuitively followed my soul's guidance, and I heard my soul say to me loud and clear in 2001 after 9/11, and I didn't even know why, but I heard this loud and clear: turn off the news and don't ever turn it back on. And I was like, okay, I don't know why, but I'll do it. I'll be obedient. I will turn it off, and I won't ever turn it back on. So I have not watched news since September 2001. But I mean, all the news I need, I'm on the computer. Anything I need to know as far as the news, it comes to me. And my neighbors and friends, they all know I don't watch news. So if something happens where they think I need to know, they call me, let me know, and so. So it's not like I'm burying my head in the sand. It's just like you said, what you put your attention to. And I understand and believe that. My focus has to be on what I want to see in the world. So, watching the news is not going to put my attention on what I want to see more of in the world. So,
and it's such a careful balance with that, Caroline, because I empathize. I don't watch news, and then I find myself scanning headlines and scanning headlines, on the Internet or my iPhone, and I just, because it just gets pretty depressing. And
Well, sometimes if I hear of a story that piques my interest, I know I can track it down online. But most of the time, it's not something I really. Sometimes I just need to know the headline. I don't need to know the gory details because I don't need to focus on the gory details. So I do try moment by moment to keep my vibration high, to stay in alignment with my higher self, and to keep myself at a high vibration, because I know that from within. One of the terms I heard you mention, and I think on a video I saw of yours, was the inner connection to inner peace that connects to international peace. So it's for me, it starts with that inner peace, that inner peace, which then radiates outward to everyone you come in contact with, and that could be through a radio show or in person. So
And I like to...
Go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Well, and just building upon that, I mean, I like to think that inner peace has actually become a global responsibility, because when we look at massive lack of inner peace, and then we start to try to address that lack of inner peace through massive consumerism, then that contributes to that contributes to environmental degradation. It also contributes to geopolitical conflicts, whether it's over natural resources, whether it's oil or diamonds or metals for cell phones from the Congo, and so having a world that is completely out of lack of having hundreds and hundreds of million people completely out of inner peace, looking to solve that through consumerism is just destructive. And there's some wonderful research, scientific research, calling it the hedonic treadmill. The hedonic treadmill is, I need something outside myself for a quick fix so I feel better, and it's a treadmill. You just stay on it. Whereas there's some great scientific research pointing to it's more of a sense of connection and belonging that brings a sense of happiness, more so than the temporary pleasures that come. And then those temporary pleasures, then there's the stress of trying to get them again, make more money, and so forth. So,
exactly.
So it's interesting,
That's so true.
Of course, and of course we need our basic needs met also. So, so there's a balance there.
Right, but it's so true that society, as generally, seeks for whatever is bothering them emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally. They seek outside of themselves for a solution when the solution truly lies within. So you want to heal from within, and once you heal from within, then you understand that what you thought a new car or whatever is out there, you thought would bring you happiness and peace. And so many people have thought, okay, I get this, I'll be happy. They get it, in a few days or a few weeks, they're not, they're back. Like you said, that treadmill, okay, that didn't do it. Okay, I need something else. Okay, that didn't do it. So I need something else. So, but then once you mature, I think, spiritually, you get to the point where you understand that nothing outside of yourself, not this material world, which one of the things that stuck with me from science class, 7th grade science class, when we were studying molecules, my science teacher said to us, nothing is truly solid. And that stuck with me. Like, nothing is truly solid? Wait, I thought this table was solid. So that, in essence, science has proven long ago that this material world is really an illusion. It's not true. It's not real. It's not the real. And nothing that's not real can really satisfy. The things that can satisfy is what you were talking about: love, joy, compassion, family. Those are the feelings that will really satisfy your internal need. And once that's satisfied, then you won't be seeking things outward to consume. So I totally agree with you. So we're totally on the same page.
And we have to also remind there's a balance. It's interesting. It's like it's easier to have these inner states when there's basic needs, but when there's lack of basic needs, it takes more of a meditation master to stay in a place of balance.
Exactly. For me, I always remind myself, though, whatever I'm experiencing, I did create that. I'm creating this reality. So I created whatever shows up, whatever arises in my reality in that moment, whether it's something pleasant or unpleasant. I have to remind myself, well, I created that. reality I'm experiencing, and my higher self created it for a reason. I may not understand it on a human conscious level, because our human consciousness is so limited. We can't see the big picture. But my higher self can see the big picture, so I have to just keep trusting, and it's just a matter of trust and knowing. I believe, and I always say this, when you really know in your heart who you are, where you know that you are connected to God, you can never be separated from God, you can never be hurt, you're always protected, you're always loved. When you know that, you can kind of move through your day fearlessly, knowing that, okay, whatever rose, I created it. Okay, I created it for a reason. Let me deal with it. And let me look at for the positive, because in every moment there's a positive. We can focus on the negative, or we can focus on the positive. So let me shift my focus to a more positive meaning of this current moment, and also by staying in the moment and not, always looking to get to another moment, or are always dwelling on a past moment, knowing that now is it. Now is all there is. So let me do the best I can with right now. So there's a lot of good wisdom that has come from the ancient teachings, and science now is really, from everything I'm studying with quantum physics, it's just backing up what ancient wisdom has taught us for eons.
Right, and that's really exciting, because scientific studies help open doorways where, can open doorways for people to receive such ideas. And it is exciting.
Yes, that is so true, because for me, I really struggled when I was just studying spirituality. I struggled with the understanding of it, because it was so different from what we were brought up to believe. And but when I saw what the belief and understood that science is actually saying the same thing, I was like, wait a second, this all makes perfect sense to me now. And some people, like for me, I don't need science to prove every aspect of spirituality, but some people that scientific end of it, because that's why I say with the show that science and spirituality are both saying that we're literally all connected, we're all one. So it kind of appeals to the science person and the spiritual person, so trying to combine the two. So, and that's why I try to have guests that are in both fields, the scientific and the spiritual field, on the show.
And then the fun challenge is, okay, what is that awareness? How does that awareness translate in day-to-day life?
Exactly.
And that's where it gets really interesting, because I can have that awareness, at the same time, I can get triggered, whether it's in traffic or something else. And so this is where I think it gets really interesting in terms of, for folks who embrace some type of meditation practice, because then we introduce the concept of, not the concept, but the experience of the witness. This part of my consciousness which can witness my thoughts, emotions, and feelings. And I think that there alone, just the fact that, wait, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my body, that there's this other part, this awareness. And so this is where I just get really excited. So more and more folks that practice that, then you combine that with some basic tools, and this is what we explore in the Peace Ambassador training. You combine the ability to be in the witness, and then to be mindful, being aware of what's happening, and then it creates that ability to then pause instead of automatically reacting. You can actually pause, and so that, and then also when in the witness, Mickey Singer, I heard him once say that the witness is the soul. So you think about this part that's witnessing.
Yes.
If you go deeper into that, you actually go into soul awareness, and then you bring that into awareness. But then you start to feel that oneness, that non-dual state. So the more time spent in that, then we can go from being reactive, and then we can choose our response, and then we can also tap into an intuition that comes beyond the intellect. And that intuition has insights that, the mind just can't comprehend. So in terms of coming back to global, oneness and being aware of that, beyond just an intellectual concept, is then to start to experience it through deeper meditative states, and then to translate that into day-to-day actions. I think that's the part. We also do a Yoga Day Summit, and if you look at yogadaysummit.com, we had 9 hours of video last year, and including a video from Michael Singer, and it was just a phenomenal experience to look at the impact of yoga in the world, yoga and meditation, and the fact that this. Here's the part that people don't realize, is that great masters in the Himalayas planned for yoga to come to the West years and years and years before it came here, and they waited until the West had a language to understand the inner technology, and they waited until we had quantum physics. Because prior to that, the yogis knew the West wouldn't have a language to understand yoga. And it was sent to the West to help harmonize humanity, because they saw that we were coming into the atomic age, and unless we really developed our inner science, we would have the ability to destroy ourselves.
Right.
And so here we come back to this idea of inner peace is a global responsibility.
Right. Very true. And I did get to see the movie Awake. The story of the yogi that brought it to the West. I did get to see that. That was a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
Yes. But wow, it's I truly do believe that the consciousness we're going through a consciousness shift, which is so great that the name of the network is the Shift Network, because I truly believe that each day, more and more people are understanding this truth that we're talking about. And the truth of oneness does not have, like you say, it doesn't have a color, it doesn't have religion, it's just that we are literally all connected. And when you hurt another person, you're really hurting yourself. And it can be, we can make it that simple of an understanding. It doesn't have to be complex, and I believe that, the peace, all of the different organizations like the Shift Network, Humanities Team, what is it, the International Day of Peace, which is September 21st, and now there's the Global Oneness Day, which is October 24th, which actually now there are enough signatures to go to the UN for to make Global Oneness Day on the calendar, like the International Day of Peace. But all these days that are focusing on peace and oneness and love, because to me it just all boils down to love for one another. And that translates, I believe, in every religion, every culture, every race. So it's so great. It's so great the work that you're doing. And did you want to maybe share with the audience some things that might be coming up, some events that might be coming up? Sure. Go ahead. Share with us.
Well, a few resources right now is worldpeacelibrary.com. There's over 370 now, I think, interviews that have been mapped out. It's a free resource. Highly encourage you to use it for yourself, family, schools. and there's just interview after interview, and the key part is that they're laid out in a way where you can start to see what peace looks like from international. We also have the summerofpeace.net, and we will be launching that June 21st. Right now, you can see the recordings that are in there from last year. A lot of those are now also in the World Peace Library. We also, you want to look at yogadaysummit.com, and that last year was the first International Day of Yoga on June 21st, and we celebrated with 9 hours of just phenomenal videos. And I had traveled to Rishikesh, India, to conduct interviews with the Swamis, Swaminis, and yoga teachers on the bank of the Ganges River at the birthplace of yoga in the Himalayas. And so there's some wonderful, wonderful interviews. And I'll be going back there again in just a couple of weeks to Rishikesh, India, to conduct interviews. So definitely, so again, it's yogadaysummit.com, summerofpeace.net, and worldpeacelibrary.com. So those are some resources, and just highly encourage you to enjoy them for yourself and then share them with family and friends too.
Okay, and also the Shift Network. Is it shiftnetwork.org or
.com?
.com. Okay.
Yeah, and the Shift Network is it's a social enterprise, which means we're for profit with a very strong philanthropic focus, and so a lot of the things that we do are offered for free, and there are courses, and that enables us to keep offering what we're able to offer. Right.
Yes. I actually heard of you and the Shift Network through Humanities Team.
Through Steve. Okay, wonderful.
Yes, through Steve. Yes. And I stay very connected to Humanities Team and their efforts on awakening the world to oneness, because we actually have the exact same mission and goals. Yes, Steve was a guest on the show, and Global Oneness Day is something I'm very active in with Humanities Team.
Yeah, we love that program.
Yes. So that's actually how I listen to them weekly, and then I was like, okay, I have to send you and Emily an invite.
Yay!
And Emily will be on in March, and also Lynn McTaggart. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but it was her statement in What the Bleep that woke me up. It was one sentence. The biggest problem in the world today is the illusion of separateness. And when she said that, it woke me up. And she will be on Awake to Oneness Radio in March, the end of March. So I'm really looking forward. I love all my guests. I thank you so much for taking the time out and being with us on Awake to Oneness Radio. And thank you so much for all the work that you're doing with the Shift Network, with the Summer of Peace, your book, an amazing book. People go to Amazon and check it out, God and Conflict. So thank you so much. I will wish you have a great weekend. The hour always goes by so fast.
It does.
Yes, it does. When we're having these kind of conversations, the hour is just, the time flies. But thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and I will stay in touch with you via email. We'll keep in touch with each other.
Wonderful.
Okay?
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you.
Okay.
You have a great night. Okay.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.